So Woj says Bradley Beal's available, and it's not gonna take much to get him. His scoring came way down. Pretty good 3-point shooter, pretty good field goal shooter. He's had one field year where he shot 50% from the floor. He's had years in the upper 30s from three. Known as a good defender, good two-way player. I think that's the league right now. As many good, skilled guys who can also defend. And I know that's oversimplifying, but the NBA went through an era where they were going with the specialists, and we got caught up too much. The Mavs got way too caught up in this idea of 3-and-D guys. He'll just catch it and shoot it and go play defense. Yeah, that'll be genius. Well, it doesn't work out like that, because defenses, as you go along, put pressure on you, and those guys that can only shoot, they get put in situations and get exploited. And that's why this Mavs team hasn't been a serious contender, and that's why the Denver Nuggets are. They have 7 other guys beyond Jokic that are versatile players. Now, Bradley Beal's a little overpaid. He got paid like a superstar, but this cap's going up. It's $150 million. If you have a guy that takes up 40% of it, it's not ideal. But you can, I think you could do a lot of good with a 29-year-old Bradley Beal. You might have another 3 or 4 years with him pretty close to his prime. And I think you get him in a more winning environment, and, his effort and the production might go back up to what it was in its peak. There's an injury concern, yes, with Bradley Beal. But, yeah, he can be a great defender. He's not just a good defender, but when he is locked in on a winning team, Bradley Beal can lock the crap down on some dudes.
Yeah, I like Bradley Beal a pretty decent amount. I think he would be a nice number 2 to Luka's 1. I think the efficiency numbers would go up even more for Bradley Beal. It'd be the first real legit time he could just be a number 2. And I think his game allows for that, the catch and shoot off-ball stuff. I think he could do some of that stuff. So that's cool. I do wonder, getting in a winning environment, are you going to play more than 60 games? Because he's only played 60 games once since 2019. Otherwise, it's 57, 40, and 50. So how much of that is just, it's Washington, we're doing a ton of losing, I'm load managing, whatever, willy-nilly, or how much of that is legit, I'm physically unable to play, and so I'm missing upwards of 30 games a year.
Yeah. I need to have my medical staff be like, he's good to go.
Right.
This is actually a good thing that he was load managing. But, if it's a guy that's breaking down with significant serious injuries every 25 games played and just can't stay in a lineup, then I would be willing to, back out of it. But going into it, I can't imagine you'd get a better player than Bradley Beal.
Let me ask you this, though, because he has a no-trade clause. If you're Bradley Beal, is there reasons to say, okay, the Mavericks are a team I'd like to play for? It's going to be a short list. He's probably going to give them 2, maybe 3 teams that he's willing to play.
I think yes. I think he's always been a guy that I've envisioned that would be a great compliment to Luka. Luka's going to set him up for a lot of open looks, and I get that their plan is to also bring back Kyrie. So maybe a fan's thinking, okay, well, now you've got 3 guards. Bradley Beal clearly can play off ball. I'd like to see more, since we got a small sample side of how Luka can handle doing that. Certainly in that game against Philadelphia, I thought he did a good job of doing it. But to me, they had success in the postseason with that 3-guard lineup, rocking with Dinwiddie, Brunson, and then you had Doncic. I think maybe Jason Kidd will know how to make that work. I would love Bradley Beal. I do think the injury risk is something you've got to look into. And I do think a large part of it is there wasn't a need for him to really grind out the last 20 or so games of a season when Washington's out of it. But there's also something here where they just made a trade pretty recently with KP. So, this is clearly 2 front offices that have done business together that have a working relationship.
I think that's great. And if in the process of acquiring him, you could deal your bad contracts, Hardaway Jr. and Bertans, and the chances the 10th overall pick ends up better than Beal are very, very slim. It has been one thing after another, like just in early 2023 knee, foot, hamstring. In late 2022, it was hamstring. Early 2022, thigh, wrist, personal, right hip, hamstring, back, hip, foot, and these aren't going back long. This is the last 24 months. There's something that hits every couple of months that he's attempting to play. The Mavs do have a very accomplished training staff, and one that's been credited in the past with getting guys healthy and keeping them healthy. So there would definitely need to be some more consistency if you were going to, get the value out of Bradley Beal than what he's demonstrated in the last 4 seasons, though. That's a little troubling. But, right now you're in a situation where you just don't have great options. The other one is Bojan Bogdanovic, who is now in Detroit, was in Utah. Pretty good player. Mavs are being tied to him, and he can fill up a stat sheet too.
He could absolutely. One of the games that I went to see late in the season with the Mavs was watching him play live, and he was the only thing that really kept Detroit in that game. His ability to shoot, his ability to pass.
Yeah,
I mean, it was you could tell that there was a frustration level of playing in Detroit, and all the young players that they have up there. Dwayne Casey, it just kind of didn't pull together. They had to overpay, to get our guy from the Suns to come over and coach. But that's a guy, when you watch him play, you could tell that's a pro's pro.
Yeah.
The way he's moving around, the way he's willing, he's not afraid to take a shot.
And I like that we could be adding guys that actually can pass the ball, because this Mavericks team has been so deficient in that. Even a guy like Tyler Hero or Bradley Beal or Bojan Bogdanovic that average like 4.5 to 6 assists per game, depending on which season it is. That's a massive upgrade from what they've had with Bullock and Dodo.
Yeah, and then this again, being live at the game and seeing him play, there's a defensive presence about him. I mean, he is trying to pick up guys and and try, and he understands the switches and things, and you can see here's a pro. He's seen it all, and his ability to
he's athletic.
Be in the
right, strong,
right
fast.
place, right time type of a guy. And I would say, man, that would be one of those. If you said, hey, you could add this guy, I'd be all for that. Just by the way he just carried himself in that game with the Pistons and
100%.
watching him play.
It's interesting because it would probably be the number 10 pick is why Washington would do this. Getting a lot of texts like, why would Washington basically take a salary cap dump? They're going ahead and rebuilding, right? They recognize that.
For the Bradley Beal thing?
Yes. So they'd want the number 10 overall pick. Clearly, that's what you're giving up there.
Ownership in Washington is given the go-ahead to make this. I mean, Beal has a great relationship with the owner there, and he's really big, as we know, in the community. And the owner is basically said, listen, we have to do something different here. And if it means trying to better the franchise, then I think that's what they're looking at.
And rebuilding teams, they partially want bad contracts so they can tank. It's like, THJ and Bertans, for you, that's horrible. Mm-hmm. For us, that fills our spending responsibility. We have guys that can start and ensure we won't be one of the better teams in the NBA. All we want is the draft pick. We need a draft pick from you, and we need a ticket to high lottery picks for probably the next 2 seasons, and therefore it works for them. And then you combine that with the fact that less and less contenders actually have draft capital to spend. These teams that want to rebuild, they're not in a seller's market right now. All of the contenders have already exhausted most of their ammunition over the last couple of off seasons trying to build contenders. So it's a really very unique offseason compared to recently, where a lot of teams are in a stalemate and we have to just wait this thing out type of reality.